You spent your whole life hearing this. You have to be high vibe to manifest your desires. But no one ever told you what I'm about to reveal. Now, this idea of high vibration, it's not just incomplete, it's dangerous. It might actually be sabotaging your life while you think you're doing everything right. And to prove it, I'm going to give you the first secret right now. The universe doesn't respond to your mood of the day. It responds to your identity. You can feel good for a few minutes, say affirmations, do visualizations. But if deep down in your consciousness, you're still stuck in the old pattern, nothing changes. And it's not just me saying this. It's a lost teaching of thought, master of Hermetic wisdom, hidden from humanity for millennia. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how he taught how to manifest a reality without needing to be high vibe all the time, without forcing yourself to feel happy, but using a process so deep, it transforms everything you manifest. And most people have never even heard of it. But before I show you how to apply this, you need to understand the invisible mistake almost everyone makes. Because if you don't see this now, you'll stay stuck thinking. Manifestation depends on your emotional state. And from here on, I'll take you on a journey where each step breaks a part of this cycle of frustration. And in the end, when I show you the full process, you'll never look at manifestation the same way again. What is engraved in the silence of the mind becomes word, and what is held as a silent word becomes form in the world. Now that you've started to see that high vibration is not the secret to manifestation, it's time to open a door that many are afraid to even touch. This door reveals something that Thoth and ancient masters knew very well, but most people prefer to ignore. The universe is not made only of light, joy, and good things. It's made of balance, of alternating forces, of a movement that never stops. You might have heard of this as yin and yang, day and night, masculine and feminine, expansion and contraction. In Hermeticism, this universal truth has a clear name: polarity and rhythm. And here's the point that few want to accept. As long as you try to live only on the positive side, trying to escape the negative, you are, without realizing it, trapped in the pendulum that swings endlessly from one pole to the other. Thoth said that everything in the universe vibrates in cycles. Nothing stays still. Everything flows. And this flow has a precise rhythm that rises and falls, that expands and contracts. This is the law of rhythm, a deep Hermetic principle that says nothing, absolutely nothing remains in the same state. Even the most enlightened of masters felt sadness at some point. Even those who achieved inner peace have faced external chaos. Because the secret of life is not escaping the oscillation, but learning to remain conscious in the middle of it. But where's the trap in this? The trap is in believing that the positive is the final goal, when in reality, it's just one part of the cycle. When you believe that the goal of life is to always stay high, you silently resist the low. And what happens when you resist something? That thing gains power over you. Hermeticism is clear about this. What you reject dominates you. What you accept, you transcend. So if you're always chasing a constant state of happiness, peace, or success, it's inevitable that at some point, the opposite side of that experience will show up. Sadness, conflict, or failure. That doesn't mean you failed on your spiritual journey. It simply means you are within the flow of existence, where everything has a beginning, middle, and end, where every peak is followed by a valley. But here's the real danger, and pay close attention to this, because few people talk about it. Falling is not the problem. Everyone falls. The real problem is what you do when you're down. That's when most people lose everything they've built. Because when they're up vibrating positivity, people believe life is finally working. High chat gapped. But when the cycle goes down, they despair, doubt, question, and abandon everything they believed in. That's the moment when the subconscious, silent and powerful, records a truth. Things didn't work out. And when that truth enters your subconscious, it starts to create your reality. That's why her mechanism always taught the neutralization of the pendulum. Thoth said that the wise one does not stop the pendulum from swinging, but learns not to be dragged by it. While the circumstances of life go up and down, The consciousness of the true seeker stays firm in the middle, observing the flow without identifying with it. Because whoever identifies with the rise will suffer with the fall. But whoever remains at the center, even when everything shifts, does not lose their inner peace or clarity. Now think about this in your practical life. How many times have you started a project full of motivation and then abandoned it when the excitement faded? How many times did you believe everything was working out, but as soon as one obstacle appeared, you doubted everything? That's the pendulum swing, silently acting in your life. And until you understand that this movement is natural, you'll stay stuck in this endless cycle, the lost teaching of thought, the middle path. Here's where things start to get more dangerous. Your subconscious doesn't manifest what you consciously desire. It manifests what you emotionally accept as truth in your most vulnerable moments. Let's make this clear once and for all. It's no use repeating 1,000 times, "I am prosperous, I am successful, I am happy," if behind the scenes of your mind, what you really feel is everything's wrong. Nothing works out. I don't deserve this. Because it's that feeling of wrongness, of lack, of unworthiness that your subconscious will turn into reality. The universe doesn't respond to the words from your mouth. It responds to what your heart silently carries. And here's something curious. This truth is not new in ancient Egyptian texts. In the Book of the Dead, we find Thoth as the deity who observes the judgment of the heart. The Egyptians knew the heart symbolically represented what the person truly believed and felt beyond appearances. At the moment of judgment, the heart was placed on a scale, and if it was heavier than the feather of truth, it meant the person had not lived in alignment with their essence. This metaphor speaks directly to the emotional weight we carry inside us, often without realizing it. And what does this have to do with your life today? Everything. Because while you rationally believe one thing, but emotionally carry another, what creates your reality is what you feel when things go wrong, and what you affirm when you're feeling motivated. Your subconscious is constantly paying attention to those internal cracks. It records not your conscious intention, but what you accept as truth when no one is watching. In those moments when you break down, question everything, and feel like you've lost control, that's why the falls we talked about earlier are so dangerous. Not because you fell, but because in the moment of falling, you accepted that life isn't working in your favor. And once the subconscious accepts that, it starts to shape your reality from that point forward. You might think this sounds unfair, but those and the Hermetists didn't see it that way. They taught that the universe doesn't judge, it only responds. It doesn't care whether you're happy or sad. It calibrates your reality based on your deepest vibration. If deep down you believe something is missing, reality will mirror that lack, not as punishment, but as vibrational coherence. Now think with me. How many times have you told yourself everything will be okay, but deep down you were afraid it wouldn't be? How many times have you visualized something positive, only to feel that quiet pang of doubt right after that inner voice saying, "Will it really work?" That conflict creates an unstable vibrational field, and the universe, following its own order, responds exactly to that divided field. That's why so many people can't manifest what they want, because part of them wants it, but another part doesn't believe it. And guess which part the subconscious registers? The one you feel is true in your most fragile moments. But don't confuse this with weakness. Feeling, fear, sadness, or anger doesn't make you weak. The problem isn't the passing emotion. The problem is when you accept that emotion as your identity. The mistake happens when you feel fear and believe you are a fearful person, when you feel sadness and believe your life is doomed to unhappiness. That unconscious acceptance becomes a command to the universe. And I need to tell you something important. As long as your subconscious accepts as truth the feeling that something is wrong with you or with your life, it doesn't matter how much you study, visualize, or meditate. Because in the end, that feeling will guide the manifestation of your reality. This is where change begins. But it's still not the time to show you how to change it. Because before you can alter what's recorded in your subconscious, you need to understand how those truths got in there in the first place. There's no use trying to reprogram something if you don't know how it was programmed. And that's exactly why, in the next step, I'll show you how these limiting ideas entered your mind without you realizing it, and what you need to do to break this cycle. But if the subconscious creates your reality, how can we get it to accept something different? To answer that, we need to go back to a time when knowledge wasn't fragmented, when spirituality, science, and philosophy were parts of one unified wisdom. That's where we find Thoth, the Egyptian master, the one the Greeks later called Hermes, Trismegistus, and who many recognize as the father of Hermetic wisdom. Thoth wasn't just a scribe or a symbolic god. He represented the one who understood the hidden structure of reality and taught a path that goes far beyond the superficial positivism you see around today. And here's one of the most ignored keys by modern seekers. Thoth taught that true elevation of consciousness doesn't lie in choosing one side of polarity, but in finding the point that's beyond it. There is a mental state where both the positive and the negative still exist in the world, but they no longer control who you are inside. That state was called by the ancient masters the middle path. But let's be clear about what this means, because many people confuse balance with passivity. The middle path is not apathy. It's not standing still while life happens. It's not living in the middle ground without emotionally engaging with anything. The middle path is the state where you observe reality with clarity, without being dragged by the compulsive desire to always feel good or the constant fear of falling. While most people are running from one extreme to another, either chasing pleasure and achievement or fleeing pain and failure, both taught that the true conscious creator remains steady in the center, observing the flow of life without identifying with it. That doesn't mean he doesn't feel emotions, but that he doesn't get lost in them. In Hermeticism, this is called the principle of neutralization. Thoth said, the lower laws of nature, like polarity and rhythm, can be transcended when you understand and apply higher laws. It doesn't mean those laws disappear, but that you are no longer controlled by them. It's like rising to a level above the game where you can see the pieces moving, but you're no longer one of them. Buddha, centuries later, would teach something very similar when speaking of the middle way as the path to liberation from suffering. He didn't preach denial of life or attachment to worldly things. He spoke of balanced awareness, observing without clinging, acting without being attached to the outcome. But deep down, that wisdom was already present with Thoth, because he knew the universe is made of cycles, and trying to cling to one pole while ignoring the other is fighting against the very nature of the cosmos. But there is a point, a frequency where you don't deny duality, but you also aren't dragged by it. And it's at that point that you find true stability. And pay attention here, because this is where many people get confused. They believe balance means standing still, acting, feeling, living, when in fact, balance is conscious movement. It's living through the highs and lows of life without getting lost in them. It's feeling joy without clinging to euphoria and feeling sadness without drowning in pain. It's knowing that everything passes and nothing defines who you are. But hold on. Hi chat gapped. Balance is not passive. Neutrality. There is a specific frequency that creates your desired reality. And that's what we're going to talk about now. Frequency is not emotion, it's identity. There is a specific frequency that creates your desired reality. And to understand this, you need to take a step beyond what most people ever do. Because many still confuse frequency with emotion. They think it's just about feeling joy, peace, or gratitude, and that's it. Everything will happen. But that's only a very superficial part of the process. The frequency that manifests your reality is not a fleeting feeling. It doesn't depend on how you woke up today or the mood you're in at this moment. It is something much deeper. Frequency is the identity you hold silently as you live your life. It is the mental image you have of yourself and accept as truth. Not as someone you hope to become in the future, but as who you already recognize yourself to be now. And here's the difference that changes everything. Emotion is temporary. Frequency is constant. Emotion passes like the wind. Frequency stays like the ground. Emotion is an effect of your momentary experience. Frequency is the foundation that creates your experiences. That's why so many people do visualizations, meditations, and affirmations and still stay in the same place. Because they visualize for 5 minutes, and for the other 23 hours and 55 minutes of the day, they continue to identify with the limited and insecure version of themselves. And in the end, what matters is not what you imagine for a moment, but what you accept is truth about who you are. Thoth taught this in ancient Hermetic texts. In the Corpus Hermeticum, he states that the universe doesn't respond to what you casually think, but to what you are in essence. If you see yourself as small, needy, at the mercy of chance, then that is your vibration. And no matter how much you desire grand things, the universe will only mirror who you truly recognize yourself to be deep inside. So ask yourself now, who do you believe you are when you're alone, with no one to cheer you on or criticize you? What is the silent story you tell yourself? Because that story creates your frequency, and that frequency shapes your reality. And pay close attention, because this is where change begins to happen. It's no use wanting to be something different if you don't change your internal identity. Frequency doesn't shift when you repeat empty words. It shifts when you decide from the inside out who you are going to be from now on, when you accept this new identity, not as a mask, but as your truth. Now that you know what frequency is, you need to understand where this frequency operates on. What level of reality does it begin to create? Because, contrary to what it seems, the physical world is not the starting point of creation. In fact, it is the final stage, the result. The real starting point is far beyond what your eyes can see. And here, we enter a part that most people don't even know exists, because we were taught to believe that reality begins in the physical, and that everything that exists is in what we can touch, measure, and quantify. But that is only a tiny fraction of the truth. The plane where everything begins is invisible. Not invisible because it's magical or mystical, but because it is too subtle to be perceived by our ordinary senses. We're talking about the mental and spiritual plane. That's where the frequency you hold starts to take shape. That's where your identity vibrates and creates the first seeds of the reality you will later harvest in the physical world. Thoth made this clear in his teachings about the creation of reality. For him, everything begins in the mental, which is the field where images and ideas are formed. Then it passes through the spiritual plane, where these ideas are energized, given life, intention, and direction. Only then do these frequencies descend to the physical plane, where they finally take shape as concrete experiences. That's why, if you want to manifest a new reality, you must start where everything actually happens inside your mind and consciousness. High chat gapped. That's where your frequency vibrates. That's where your new identity is formed. And when that happens, the physical plane has no choice but to reflect that new vibration. But if everything starts in the invisible, how do you bring that into the physical world? There is an ancient code that explains this process step by step, and it is hidden in the very name of God, the code of Yahoo, the complete process of creation. There is a code as ancient as humanity itself, hidden in texts that have crossed millennia and withstood the manipulation of time. I'm talking about the sacred tetragram, YHWH, a name that many people associate with God. But in its original essence, it's much more than a name. It's a process of creation, a vibrational formula. And this isn't about empty mysticism or superstition. It's spiritual logic because the universe follows principles, not whims. And when you understand this code, you realize that manifestation isn't about luck or chance. It's a clear, simple, yet deep sequence. We begin with the first letter, Yod. It represents pure consciousness, the origin of everything. Yod is not thought yet, not emotion, not image. It's that silent point within you when nothing has been created, but everything is possible. It's the formless state of being in Hermeticism. Thoth would call this atom the unmanifested principle, the silent ocean, where all possibilities sleep, waiting to be awakened. Then comes he, the second letter. Here, creation begins to take form. He represents the mental image, the thought that gives shape to the invisible. It's when within your pure consciousness, an idea, a desire, a vision arises. It's like the artist who looks at a blank canvas and for the first time imagines what could be painted there. In Egypt, this was represented by Hu, the creative word, the speech that gives form to what was once silence. But it's not enough to have an idea. How many people have dreams and never realize them? What's missing is the third step, VAV. This letter represents vibrational acceptance. Here, we're not talking about a fleeting emotion, but a deep feeling of acceptance. It's when you feel that what you imagined is already true, already belongs to you, even if you don't see it yet in the physical world. This is the stage of union between consciousness and image. In Hermeticism, Thoth would call this seer, the inner wisdom that perceives the truth behind appearance. And finally comes the last He, manifestation in the physical, the moment when what began as an invisible idea becomes a concrete reality. Here, there is no more doubt, no more separation. What you were in the invisible now exists in the visible world. In Egypt, this was symbolized by marked cosmic balance, where spiritual order expresses itself in matter. Do you see how everything follows a flow? It's not about waiting for the universe to give you something, because you deserve it. It's a process where you create your reality from the first moment you decide who you are, all the way to the moment that identity manifests in your outer world. Now, there's only one thing left: how to apply this in your daily life, without falling into the trap of separation between you and your desired reality, because that's exactly where most people fail. They know what they want, but keep thinking like someone who doesn't have it yet. They keep acting like someone who is still separated from what they desire, and as long as that separation exists, manifestation doesn't happen. This is where I want to show you the most important practice of all, something so simple, yet so deep that it can completely transform the way you create your reality from now on. It's about no longer thinking of your desire as something distant, but starting to think from your desire as if it were already your reality. And I need you to pay close attention. Now, as long as you think of something, you're acknowledging that it is separate from you. It's outside in the future, distant from your current reality. But when you think from, you are already there. You're no longer desiring, you're living. The difference might seem subtle, but it's the difference between continuing to wait and finally manifesting the final practice. High chat gapped. Consciously shifting your frequency. Because wanting a new reality when everything is easy is simple. What's really difficult is sustaining that identity when the external world shows the opposite of what you want to see. And at this point, many people give up because they expect the external reality to change first. When in truth, it's who you are in the middle of the chaos that determines whether the cycle will break or continue. Look at the great masters of humanity. None of them lived in a bubble of comfort. Jesus was persecuted. Buddha faced temptations and doubts, both in Egyptian myths, descended into the underworld to bring the light of knowledge to humanity. None of them tried to run away from difficulties. What they did was keep their consciousness aligned, even when the world was collapsing around them, because they knew it's not circumstances that define who you are. It's who you are that transforms circumstances. Both spoke clearly about this in the principle of cause and effect. He taught that the lower obeys the higher. In other words, your mind, when in control, governs matter. But when you don't assume that position of command, matter governs your mind, who's in control of your reality, your consciousness, or your circumstances. Because challenges won't disappear. The question is not whether you'll face loss, frustration, or difficult moments. That's part of the flow of life. The real question is, who do you choose to be when those things arrive? Are you going to be the one who sinks into doubt and fear, or the one who remains in the state of already living your desired reality, even if nothing around you confirms it at the moment? This is where most people fail. They start out confident, but fall apart at the first obstacle. And it's exactly at that point that the subconscious records defeat as reality. But the one who gets through that moment with clarity maintains their frequency intact. And the universe, obeying the law of cause and effect, aligns with that frequency, bringing manifestation at the right time. Now that you've understood the philosophical and practical foundation, there's one thing left. The real step to shift your frequency and finally manifest your reality. And I'm going to show you that now. Because from this point on, knowing isn't enough. It's time to apply. And this is where we fulfill the promise of this video. High vibes are not what create your reality. What creates your reality is the shift in your conscious frequency. This means mentally and vibrationally, assuming that you already are the person who lives in the reality you desire, even before any external evidence shows it. And how do you do that in practice? First, you mentally assume that what you desire is already a fact, not as a future dream, but as a present, silent, intimate reality that doesn't depend on external proof to be true. You stop asking and start affirming. You stop waiting and start being. Then you act, decide, and feel from that version of yourself. How would that person think? How would they act? How would they behave in daily situations? And here's the detail that makes the difference. You don't need to force emotions. You don't need to try to convince yourself emotionally. You just need to act with the silent conviction that it's already yours. If you desire prosperity, it's not about feeling rich all the time. It's about making decisions that a prosperous person would make, even if your bank account hasn't changed yet. If you desire love, it's not about forcing yourself to feel loved. It's about treating yourself and others with the respect and ease of someone who already knows they are worthy of love. This is living from the state of consciousness of the desired reality. And when you do that, your frequency changes. It stops being the vibration of lack and becomes the vibration of fulfillment. And the external reality, obeying the law of mentalism that Thoth taught so often, responds to that vibration. Because the all is mind, and the universe is mental. What you accept internally becomes your external reality. Now, you have the complete practice. From here, the choice is yours. Continue reacting to the outside world, or begin creating your reality from the inside out. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you has already started to awaken. And I want to know who truly stayed with me until the end. So write in the comments, "My frequency awakened." I want to see who is committed to this inner transformation, and not just looking for quick answers. And if at any moment you feel in your heart the desire to support this channel to help spread more content like this around the world, down below in the first pinned comment, there's a link where you can contribute directly. Every bit of support is welcome and helps this message reach even more people who, like you, are ready to awaken. And hey, don't leave yet, because I've saved a special video that will go even deeper in everything we've talked about here. In it, I'll show you how to apply these teachings in your daily life in a practical and profound way. So click now on the video showing on the screen, and let's meet there. There's so much more waiting for you.